My name is Shamsia bint Fad, and I was 26 years old when my life shattered, though I had been breaking quietly long before that. I was born into Saudi royalty, into a house where my name carried weight and my silence carried survival. From the outside, my life looked like a dream of silk curtains and guarded palaces, but inside, it felt like a carefully decorated cage. I was raised Muslim from my first breath. The adhan was whispered into my ear as an infant, and obedience was stitched into me before I learned how to speak. I memorized Quran before I understood its meaning. I learned how to lower my gaze, soften my voice, and disappear gracefully. Fear was called respect. Control was called protection. Questions were called rebellion. I never starved, yet I was always hungry. Not for food, but for something I could not name. As a child, I believed Allah was watching me constantly, waiting for me to fail. Every mistake felt dangerous. Every thought felt monitored. When I prayed 5 times a day, my body moved, but my heart stayed numb. I watched my brothers laugh freely while my world grew smaller. At family gatherings, I smiled while older women reminded me that my honor belonged to men I had not yet met. I was told my worth was purity, silence, and loyalty. I believed them because disbelief was not an option. At night, I would lie in my room surrounded by luxury and feel crushing loneliness. I asked Allah why my heart felt empty, but the ceiling never answered. I learned early that survival meant obedience, so I became very good at it. I obeyed my father, my uncles, the scholars who visited our home. I obeyed rules that were never explained. I obeyed even when my chest ached with confusion. Sometimes I wondered if everyone felt this hollow and simply hid it better than I did. Other times I feared something was wrong with me. I pushed those thoughts away because doubt itself was a sin. Still, something inside me kept whispering that faith should not feel like fear alone. I remember standing on a balcony once, looking over the city lights, thinking how strange it was that I could see everything except my own future. I was surrounded by guards yet felt unprotected, surrounded by religion yet felt unseen. I never imagined my life could be different. I never imagined I would one day tell this story with my real voice. If you are listening to me now, if you feel the weight in my words, I ask you gently to subscribe to this channel, to like this video, to comment, and to share it. And because stories like mine survive only when they are heard, and silence is how they tried to bury me. Back then, I still believed my faith was strong because I was obedient, but cracks were already forming. The prayers felt heavier, the rules felt louder, the fear felt closer. I did not know yet that everything I trusted was about to be tested, and that the God I was raised to fear was not the one who would one day answer me. I only knew that something inside me was breaking, quietly, dangerously, and there would be no turning back once it did. The night my faith began to bleed did not start with violence. It started with trust. I remember sitting on the carpet of my aunt's home, the smell of oud thick in the air, listening to a man I had known since childhood speak with authority and calm. He was respected, educated, and a guardian of religion in our family. When he quoted Quran, everyone listened. When he judged, everyone agreed. That night, a young servant girl was dragged into the room, trembling, accused of dishonor. I watched her eyes, wide and pleading, searching for mercy that never came. The verses were recited quickly, coldly, as justification. No investigation, no compassion, only punishment wrapped in holy words. I felt my stomach twist as they decided her fate. She was taken away, and I never saw her again. Something inside me snapped. I had been taught that Islam was justice, mercy, balance. But what I witnessed was cruelty wearing God's name. That night I could not pray. I tried. I stood on my prayer mat, whispered the familiar words, but they tasted like ash. My mind replayed the girl's face over and over. I asked myself if this was truly Allah's will, or if men had learned how to use scripture like a weapon. Fear flooded me. Fear of doubting. Fear of being next. Fear of thinking the unthinkable. I remembered my Quran teacher as a child, striking my hand with a stick when I mispronounced a verse, telling me pain would teach me respect. I remembered being told hell was closer to women, that we were deficient in faith and intellect. Those memories rose like ghosts. For the first time, I allowed myself to think, what if something is wrong? That thought alone made my chest tighten with terror. I locked my bedroom door that night and sat on the floor shaking. I wanted answers, but did not know where to look. I reached for my phone with hands that felt sinful. The internet was forbidden territory, but desperation is louder than rules. I typed questions I had never dared to speak. Why does Islam punish women so harshly? Why is doubt forbidden? Why do I feel fear instead of love? Each search felt like a betrayal. I deleted my history after every question, my heart racing at every sound outside my door. Then I saw a verse mentioned in a forum, words attributed to Jesus. I almost closed the page immediately. We were warned about Isa, about Christians, about corruption. Still, something made me read. The verse said, "Come to me all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." I stared at the screen. Rest. No conditions, no threats, no fear. My eyes filled with tears before I could stop them. I did not understand how words could feel gentle. I slammed my phone face down as if it had burned me. I whispered astaghfirullah over and over, trying to erase what I had read. But the words stayed. Rest. That night, I lay awake until dawn, my heart pounding, my faith wounded. I felt like I was standing on a cliff, terrified to move forward and terrified to go back. I knew something had changed. The unquestioning obedience that once defined me was gone. In its place was a dangerous ache for truth. As the call to Fajr echoed through the city, I realized I was no longer sure who I was praying to, and that realization frightened me more than any punishment ever could. I stopped sleeping after that night because silence became louder than prayer. I would lie awake staring at the ceiling, listening for footsteps outside my door. Every creak sounded like judgment. During the day, I played my role perfectly. Obedient, daughter, polite princess, faithful Muslim. But inside, I was unraveling. The questions would not leave me. They followed me into prayer, into family dinners, into the women's sitting room, where faith was discussed like a rule book, not a relationship. Late one night, I reached for my phone again, my hands shaking like a thief, stealing forbidden truth. I downloaded a Bible app, then froze, staring at the icon like it could scream and expose me. I told myself I was only curious, only researching to defend my faith, but my heart knew that was a lie. I opened the app and read slowly, afraid that angels would strike me down. The words felt different, gentle, alive. They did not threaten me. They invited me. I read about love, forgiveness, and grace. Words rarely used in my world. Flashbacks flooded me of childhood lessons where fear was the motivator. I remembered being told that questioning was dangerous, that doubt led straight to hell. My teacher once said, "Women must obey even when hurt, because patience was our path to heaven." Reading Jesus' words felt like standing in sunlight after years underground. I hated myself for feeling peace. I closed the app and deleted it, then reinstalled it again. My chest ached with guilt and longing. I began watching testimonies in secret faces, blurred voices shaking people who said they had met Jesus. I told myself they were deluded, brainwashed, yet I kept watching. I compared verses I had memorized to the words of Christ, and something inside. I whispered, "This is different." I prayed without knowing who I was speaking to. Sometimes I said, "Allah," sometimes I said, "God." Sometimes I just cried, "Please help me." I began hiding my phone under my pillow, deleting histories, locking doors, jumping at every knock. I felt watched not by God, but by people I was terrified yet drawn forward, like my soul had found oxygen. One night, unable to breathe from the tension, I whispered a name I had been warned never to call on: Jesus. The moment the name left my lips, the room felt full, like someone had stepped inside me. Warmth spread through my chest. Tears poured without permission. I was not alone, and that truth terrified me more than any threat. I did not see anything, but I felt seen. I pressed my face into my pillow to muffle sobs. My entire life had taught me that calling on Jesus was betrayal. Yet in that moment, it felt like coming home. I did not understand what was happening, but I knew one thing: there was no going back. The silence I had lived with was gone, replaced by a presence I could not unfeel. As dawn approached, I lay awake, trembling, aware that I had crossed a line drawn by fear and tradition. I did not know the cost yet, but I knew my hunger had found its first taste. The days that followed felt unreal. I smiled at breakfast, recited verses answered politely, while my mind replayed that moment again and again. I felt split between worlds, between fear and hope. I would sneak moments alone just to open the Bible app and read a few lines, then close it quickly, like contraband. Each sentence felt like water on a fire. I was burning from the inside. I remembered warnings from childhood that Christians worship 3 gods, that their book was corrupted. Yet and words in front of me were clear and kind. I felt anger rising toward the men who had told me lies. I pushed it down because anger was dangerous. I began praying silently throughout the day. Jesus, if you are real, show me if this is deception. Stop me. My heart pounded every time I said his name. I feared discovery, feared death, feared myself. Then one evening, as the sun dipped low and the call to prayer echoed through the halls, I felt a strange courage rise inside me. I locked my door, knelt on the floor, and spoke honestly. For the first time, I told God that I was tired of fear, tired of pretending, tired of earning love with obedience. I did not know the right words, but I knew my heart was speaking. When I stood up, I felt lighter, and that terrified me because lightness meant change. I lay down that night, knowing the path ahead was dangerous, and would still choose it because something alive had awakened inside me, and I could not kill it anymore. Even as sleep finally came, I sensed that my life was no longer my own, and that the truth I was touching would demand everything from me. Soon, I did not yet know how far the cost would go, but my soul had already stepped forward, and fear would have to follow me into whatever came next. I closed my eyes, whispering again the name that changed me, knowing tomorrow would test my courage, and that the girl who obeyed blindly was fading fast and would never fully return again to that cage of silence and fear. The night he came to me, I was not looking for visions. I was only exhausted. I had cried myself empty and fallen asleep with my face still wet, my heart torn between terror and longing. Somewhere between sleep and waking, the room began to change. And darkness softened, and a light unlike any I had known filled the space. It was not blinding. It was gentle, like warmth after cold. I tried to move, but my body felt still, and yet I was not afraid. Then I saw him. He stood before me dressed in white, not the white of royalty or ceremony, but something alive, flowing. His presence carried weight and peace. At the same time, I knew instantly who he was, without anyone telling me. and that knowledge broke me. I wanted to hide, to cover my face, to apologize for everything, but I could not look away. His eyes held sorrow and kindness together, as if he carried my pain without being crushed by it. He spoke my name, Aaliyah, not loudly, not with anger. He said it like someone who had always known me, like someone who had been waiting. My knees buckled and I fell. Though the ground felt like air, I wept openly, unashamed, because for the first time I felt fully seen. Every secret fear, every night of loneliness, every question I buried. He knew it all. He did not accuse me. He did not threaten me. He said, "I see you. I have always seen you." I felt wounds opening inside me, memories of being silenced, of being told my voice was dangerous, of being taught to fear God more than trust Him. He showed me moments from my life when I had cried alone, and I realized He had been there even then. I whispered, "Why me? Why would you come to someone like me? I am unclean. I am disobedient. I have doubted." He knelt before me and lifted my face. His touch was gentle, and I felt something break inside me, something heavy I had carried since childhood. He said, "You are not unclean. You are loved." The words shattered everything I had been taught. Love without conditions. Love without fear. Tears poured. From me like a flood. I wanted to stay there forever, but fear crept in. I remembered the laws, the punishments, the stories of death for apostasy. I cried out that following Him would cost my life, my family, my name, everything. He looked at me with a seriousness that did not remove peace. He said, "Whoever loses their life for my sake will find it." I did not fully understand, but the truth settled deep inside me like a seed. I woke, suddenly gasping, my heart racing, my room dark and silent. But the presence remained. I sat up shaking, touching my face still wet with tears. This was not imagination. I knew that as surely as I knew my own name. My entire body trembled with fear and awe. I whispered His name again, "Jesus," and felt peace rush through me like breath after drowning. I curled on the floor, sobbing not from terror, but from release. I knew then that I had crossed a line I could never uncross. I had encountered truth, not an idea, not a doctrine, but a person. I felt joy and dread tangled together. I thought of my father, my brothers, the scholars, the laws. I thought of death. I thought of hell as I had been taught. But those fears suddenly felt smaller than the love I had just experienced. I knelt there for a long time, speaking aloud in a voice barely mine. I told Him I was afraid. I told Him I did not know how to walk this path. I told Him I had nothing to offer but my broken obedience and my shaking faith. I said, "If you truly are who you say you are, then I give you my life, even if it is taken from me." The words felt like a knife and a healing at once. A calm settled over me deeper than anything I had known. I did not feel brave. I felt held. When morning came, I washed my face and looked in the mirror. I barely recognized myself. My eyes looked alive, haunted, but alive. I wrapped my hijab with hands that felt strange, like they belonged to someone else. I moved through the day, knowing a sentence had been written over my life that could not be erased. I belonged to Jesus now. Whether I lived or died, I knew this truth with terrifying clarity. I was no longer my own, and that knowledge carried both a promise and a warning. I would soon understand that love this powerful does not leave a life unchanged, and that the cost of following Him would demand more than I could imagine. Yet in my heart, I knew I would say yes again, even if the dream had been the last gentle thing I ever received in this world. After that night, everything inside me changed. Though nothing around me had yet moved, I carried a quiet fire under my skin, a peace that did not announce itself, but refused to leave. I still prayed outwardly, still followed routines, but my heart now answered a different voice. I noticed small shifts first. I felt compassion where bitterness once lived, when servants avoided my eyes. I met their gaze when women whispered. I did not join them. I felt less fear of God and more closeness to Him, and that alone made me dangerous. People noticed change even when I spoke less. My mother studied my face longer. My aunt asked if I was ill. An uncle remarked that my eyes looked strange too awake. I learned quickly that peace attracts attention in a world built on control. Surveillance tightened without words. My phone was checked more often. My movements questioned. The imam who visited our home began asking me directly about my iman, my faith. He spoke kindly, but his eyes were sharp. He reminded me that doubt is a disease and that women are more vulnerable to deception. I nodded respectfully while my heart pounded. Inside, I prayed, Jesus, keep me hidden. I chose Him again and again silently, while pouring tea, while lowering my gaze, while reciting words my heart no longer owned. I felt like I was walking through fire covered in silk. Emotional blackmail followed. My mother cried, telling me my obedience was her honor. My father spoke of legacy and shame. He reminded me that everything I had came from loyalty to Islam and family. I loved them deeply, and that love tore at me. I wanted to scream the truth, but I knew truth spoken too early becomes a death sentence. I remembered Jesus saying, "Be wise as serpents and innocent as doves," and I clung to that whisper. I read the Bible in fragments, memorizing verses, then deleting the app, hiding the word inside me. Instead, psalm lines, and it comforted me in the dark, though I had to look them up again and again like stolen bread. I learned to pray without moving my lips. My room became a sanctuary and a battlefield. I slept lightly, listening for footsteps. Every knock on my door sent my heart racing. I rehearsed denials in my head in case I was questioned suddenly. Still, joy bloomed in me like rebellion. I found myself smiling when alone, feeling loved without earning it. That frightened me because joy made me careless. The imam returned one evening unexpectedly. He asked me to sit alone with him, a request that made my skin crawl. He asked me directly if I had encountered Christian ideas online. My throat tightened. I felt time slow. I heard my heartbeat in my ears. I remembered the servant girl from before, and the verses used to erase her. I saw clearly how truth could be twisted. I answered, carefully saying I had questions, but my faith was intact. His gaze hardened. He warned me that Satan comes disguised as light and that punishment awaits those who stray. He said my family would suffer for my choices. I nodded, tears welling, playing the role of a frightened daughter. When he left, I collapsed, shaking, knowing the net was tightening. Days later, the breaking point came not through courage but accident. I was in my room late at night, whispering a prayer out loud for the first time, not realizing my cousin stood outside the door. I said, "Jesus, I trust you with my life." The door creaked. I froze. My cousin gasped. Silence stretched, then footsteps running. I knew instantly it was over. Fear, unlike anything I had known, flooded me. This was no longer internal. This was exposure. I fell to my knees, heart pounding, praying desperately for mercy, for wisdom, but for strength. Within hours, the house filled with voices. I was summoned to the sitting room. Faces, hard eyes burning. I felt small but steady inside, like a candle refusing to go out. My mother would not meet my gaze. My father's voice shook with rage and disbelief. I was accused of betrayal, corruption, apostasy. The word hung heavy like a sentence already passed. I wanted to deny it, to save them, to save myself, but my mouth would not lie. When asked directly, I whispered, "I follow Jesus." The room exploded, shouts, tears, threats. Hands grabbed me, I was dragged away. My heart racing, but strangely calm, as if something else was carrying me. The last thing I heard before the door slammed was my father saying, "She has brought disgrace upon us." And I knew then that there would be no gentle ending, no quiet repentance, no turning back. Love had been discovered, and danger, fully awakened. The choice I had made in secret now stood in the open, and its consequences were already moving toward me with terrifying speed. They questioned me for hours under bright lights that made time disappear. Men I had known all my life sitting like strangers with verdicts already formed. My father would not look at me. My mother sobbed silently behind a veil. I was asked again and again to recant, to say it was confusion, a phase madness brought by the internet. They promised mercy if I denied Jesus and warned of consequences if I did not. An imam recited verses about apostasy, his voice steady, like this was routine. I felt fear crawl up my spine, images of punishment drilled into me since childhood. Flashing before my eyes, I remembered being a little girl, reciting Quran perfectly. Just to earn a smile, I remembered how obedience once kept me safe. Now obedience would mean lying about the truth that had saved my soul. Inside me, a war raged, safety versus truth, life versus life. I whispered prayers under my breath. Jesus, help me stand. They told me my family would disown me. My name erased, my body hidden away. They said I was bringing shame generations deep. My father finally spoke, his voice shaking with fury and grief, asking how I could betray everything he gave me. I loved him. I wanted to run to him to say I was sorry, to choose silence again. But another voice, stronger, gentler, rose in me saying, "Whoever denies me before men, I will deny before my Father." I trembled, knowing the cost. I looked up and said quietly, "I cannot deny him." The room went still, like air sucked away. My mother cried out. My uncle cursed. The imam closed his eyes as if disappointed, not surprised. They called me stubborn and deceived, dangerous. I was told I was no longer under family protection. That night, papers were signed without me seeing them, decisions made about my life without my consent. They said this was for correction, not punishment, but I saw the truth in their eyes. I was no longer a daughter. I was a problem to be erased. Guards came after midnight. I was given no time to pack, no time to say goodbye. My mother pressed a kiss to my forehead, whispering forgiveness and goodbye. In the same breath, I was led through dark corridors, my hands shaking, my heart pounding yet strangely calm, like I was walking inside a prayer. I thought of Jesus alone before his accusers, silent, beaten, misunderstood, and I felt less alone. The vehicle waited outside, engine running, doors open, like a mouth ready to swallow me. As I was pushed inside, fear finally broke through my calm. Wondered if this was where I would die, where my story would end, unseen, unheard. I whispered again, "Jesus, I trust you." The city lights faded as we drove into darkness. I did not know where they were taking me, only that my old life was gone. Stripped of my name, my family, my protection, I was declared a disgrace, an example of what happens to women who choose truth over obedience. The road was long, the silence heavy. No one spoke to me. They did not need to. The message was clear. I belonged to no one now, not even myself. Yet in that terrifying exile, I felt a presence steady beside me, holding me together when my mind wanted to shatter. I remembered his words, "Whoever loses their life for my sake will find it," and clung to them like breath. As the vehicle finally stopped and rough hands pulled me out, I saw nothing but darkness ahead. I did not know if I would survive the night. I only knew that I had spoken truth aloud and that no threat could take it back. Whatever waited for me beyond that door, I stepped toward it, knowing I had already crossed the most dangerous line of all, and that faith once whispered, now stood fully exposed against the night, ready to be tested by fire and silence, and whatever cruelty men would justify next. They took me to a place without windows, where the air smelled of earth and old stone, and fear lived in every breath. My hands were bound, my eyes covered, but I could feel the ground change beneath my feet. Gravel, then sand, then something softer, like freshly disturbed soil. Someone whispered a prayer, not for my soul, but for their righteousness. I understood then that I was no longer being corrected. I was being erased. They forced me to my knees, the blindfold, removed moonlight, spilling over a pit, dug deep enough to swallow sound. My body shook violently, panic clawing at my chest. I begged silently, not for rescue but for courage. I thought of my mother's face, my childhood room, the girl who memorized verses to survive. They pushed me forward and I fell hard. The air knocked from my lungs as soil rained down, heavy damp suffocating. I screamed until dirt filled my mouth, choking me. The darkness pressed in. I clawed at the walls, nails tearing skin, splitting pain flaring useless. The earth closed over me, stealing air, stealing hope. My chest burned lungs screaming. I thought this is how it ends, buried for loving truth. I tried to pray, but terror fractured words. Then I whispered, Jesus, and peace unlike anything before flooded me. The panic loosened its grip. My breathing slowed. Though air was thin, I felt his presence closer than the eye, a soil crushing my body. Warmth wrapped my chest as if arms held me. I stopped fighting and surrendered. If this was death, then I would meet him here. Memories flashed not in terror but clarity. The servant girl, the verses the night he called my name. I felt freedom bloom even as my body failed. I realized they could bury my flesh, but not my soul. My heartbeat slowed. Darkness softened. I was floating held. Light pierced the black, not from above but within. I heard his voice steady saying, "Do not fear, I am with you." Even as consciousness faded, I felt joy pure, unearned. The weight pressed harder. Sound disappeared. I thought, this is deliverance or this is death. But either way, I am his. My body went still, my mind slipping away wrapped in peace as the last breath left my lungs and the world went silent, completely silent. Then nothing at all. I woke to pain before. Light my chest burned as if fire lived inside me, and air tore back into my lungs violently. I coughed dirt from my mouth, my body convulsing as hands pulled me upward, voices shouting confusion, panic. Someone was screaming my name. I realized I was no longer alone. Someone had uncovered me, dragged me out of the grave. I lay gasping under the open sky, stars spinning above me, my body shaking uncontrollably. Later, I learned that a driver, a man hired only to transport me, had returned shaken, unable to sleep, convinced he had witnessed murder. He told authorities what he saw and fled. Fear broke loyalty, and truth surfaced not through power, but terror. The men who buried me vanished when they heard questions were being asked. I was taken to a hospital under secrecy, my identity hidden. My ribs were cracked, my lungs damaged, my nails torn and bleeding. But I was alive. Days passed in fragments, drifting between sleep and pain. When I fully woke, I cried, not from suffering but from awe. I whispered, Jesus, again and again, tears soaking the pillow. I knew without doubt he had been with me in the grave. The miracle was not survival alone, but the peace that remained. I was declared dead, publicly, quietly erased while being hidden away under protection. I lost everything: my title, my family, my homeland, my name spoken only in whispers, but something greater replaced it. Freedom tasted strange at first, like air after drowning. I mourned deeply, nights filled with grief for my mother, my brothers, the life I once knew. I did not pretend it was easy. Faith did not numb pain, but it gave it meaning. Through quiet channels, I was moved out of the country. My face covered my past. Sealed, I crossed borders with nothing but scars and scripture hidden in memory. I met believers in rooms with no crosses, no signs, just faith whispered like breath. They welcomed me not as royalty, but as sister. We prayed together, laughed softly, cried openly. For the first time, community was not built on fear. I was baptized in secret water. Cold against my skin as I rose, I felt chains fall. Not metaphorical, but real. Something inside me finally released. I was taught how to read the Bible openly, how to pray freely, how to sing without shame. Every day felt dangerous and holy at once. I learned to live without luxury, without protection, without certainty. And yet, I had never felt richer. My persecutors were exposed quietly. Some punished, some disgraced, others silenced by their own corruption. No revenge was needed. Truth carried its own weight. I stopped asking why God allowed the grave, because I knew He met. There, I began sharing my story, carefully helping others trapped in fear. I saw women like me awaken eyes wide, shaking, hungry for truth. I held their hands and said, "You are not crazy. You are not alone." The nightmares faded, slowly replaced by purpose. I learned to sleep without listening for footsteps. I learned to breathe without guilt. I learned that my worth was not purity or obedience, but love freely given. I no longer belonged to fear or bloodlines or laws written to control. I belonged to Christ alone. When I looked back, I did not see a victim. I saw a woman reborn. My body still carries scars, but my soul carries light. I walk now without chains, without titles, without hiding. I live simply quietly, boldly. And every time I remember the grave, I smile because what was meant to erase me became the place I truly began to live. I live now with scars, that do not fade, and memories that still wake me at night. But I am alive in a way I never was before. I am no longer a princess, no longer protected by a name or bloodline. I live quietly in exile, learning what it means to choose faith every single day. There are mornings I miss my mother so deeply, it steals my breath. Nights, I wonder if she believes I am dead, because in her world, that would be easier. I grieve what was lost, and I do not hide that grief, because following Jesus did not erase my pain. It gave it purpose. I learned that salvation does not mean safety. It means presence. He did not pull me from suffering. He met me inside it, and that changed everything I speak. Now to those of you listening who feel trapped between truth and survival, I know that fear. I know the weight of family expectations, the terror of rejection, the threat that hangs. Now over your head when you dare to question, I will not lie to you. The cost is real. You may lose people you love. You may lose home identity security. You may lose everything that once defined you. But hear me clearly, you will not lose yourself. I lost my name but found my soul. I lost protection but found peace. I lost fear and found love that does not demand silence. I remember lying in that grave, believing my story was over, and realizing instead it was beginning. That is the power of Jesus Christ. He enters graves. He speaks life where men speak death. He does not need permission from governments, families, or laws written to control bodies and minds. He sees you where you are even now, doubting, shaking, watching this in secret, deleting history, praying without knowing who hears you. He hears you. I know, because he heard me when I whispered his name in fear. I stand today not as a victim, but as a witness. My life is quieter now, simpler but fuller. I work with believers who risk everything to help others escape silence. I hold hands with women who remind me of who I was, and I tell them what I am telling you. You are not crazy for questioning. You are not evil for seeking love without fear. You are not alone in this darkness. I do not hate my family. I pray for them. I forgive those who tried to erase me, not because they deserve it, but because I refuse to carry their chains any longer. My freedom is not revenge. It is truth. I wake each day knowing I belong to Christ, and nothing can take that from me. Not death, not threats, not graves. If you are listening and wondering if Jesus is worth the cost, I cannot answer that for you. I can only tell you what he was for me. He was peace when I was suffocating, light when I was buried, life when I was declared dead. If my story reaches you, let it be a reminder that no law, no family, no religion has the final word over your soul. Freedom has a name, and his name is Jesus.